Good morning. We are now on verse 12, and this verse starts a section on mind training, lojong, in particular, the practice of transforming adverse circumstances into the path, which is a very wonderful and practical kind of teaching. Because the idea is when bad things happen to us in our life, we don't have to just respond with being upset, unhappy, angry, depressed, but we can use these situations as part of our practice, create virtue and get closer to enlightenment and have a much better state of mind. So this verse says, even if someone out of strong desire steals all your wealth or has it stolen, dedicate to him or her your body, possessions, and your virtue, past, present, and future. This is the practice of bodhisattvas. So what do you think? Would you be able to do that? even if some relatively minor thing is stolen from us, or ripped off, or we're cheated out of something, or even if someone takes our seat, if we have a place that we think is mine. I was thinking about that this morning. About 20 years ago, I was attending some teachings by the Dalai Lama in India, and you know how it is, you got your seat. And it's supposed to be yours for the duration of the teaching. So one morning I came along and there was this couple sitting in my seat. And I didn't handle it very well. I didn't do this. Hopefully now I would handle it a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, it's pretty upsetting when, and I think it's just natural. I mean, most, if not all, countries in the world, as well as religions, say that stealing is wrong, right? So it's kind of universally regarded that, each person has the right to their property, their possessions, their things, and nobody else has the right to deprive us of them. Yeah, so it's considered an illegal and immoral action. So it's quite natural that we are upset and angry and feel violated, feel disrespected. Yeah, so it's natural to have those feelings. However, there are other ways of responding. We don't have to respond like that. So this verse is talking about a really high level of practice, okay? But a bodhisattva, again, a real genuine bodhisattva is somebody who's been training for a long, long, long time and has really subdued their disturbing emotions and has developed a very high degree of compassion and love and patience and generosity. And they have some shamatha as well, so their mind is pretty calm. And they have this naturally rising, spontaneous bodhicitta. So for bodhisattva, this would be not too difficult to do. But for us, it may be hard to do. But there are things that we can do that can help us work towards this. So one thing is just being really clear about the faults of anger, just recognizing how anger doesn't help. It's not going to get that thing back. Right? It's not going to undo what was done. And it just makes your mind unhappy and disturbed and agitated. And also, it's really hard to think clearly when you're angry, right? Your mind just gets kind of crazy. So you can't clearly think, oh, what should I do? What's the best way of handling the situation? So seeing the faults of anger helps so that you then say, okay, I don't want to go that way. I don't want to go down that road. I want to do something else instead. And then also attachment. That's another big problem here. This sense of my things. Okay, so working on attachment. And that comes from, as we all know, the basic misconception of a real I. We have a feeling there's a real I who is the owner of these things. Yeah. So the sense of I naturally leads to a sense of mine with regard to certain things, including our own body and so forth. So whatever understanding of emptiness one has, one could use that and try to locate this real I, who is the owner of these things. That's a little hard to do, but an easier thing would be to just think about impermanence and death. That's not too difficult to understand. And recognize that the things we regard as mine are really on loan. They're only mine for a limited amount of time during this lifetime. Okay? And one day we're going to die, and it could happen any day. It could happen today or tomorrow. And then these things we regard as mine are going to go to other people. Other people will regard them as theirs. Okay, so there's no permanent, absolute mine with regard to our possessions. So as monastics, it's our whole lifestyle is geared around that. We're only allowed to have a certain number of things, 13, I think, 13 things that we're allowed to have. And everything else we have is meant to be part of the community, owned by the community. Okay, so even our computers and our phones and so forth, we shouldn't really think this is mine, but it belongs to the community, the Abbey. And your room, your bed, your sheets, all of these things, they are the community's property. So that really helps, living that lifestyle. But for lay people as well, there are ways that we can reduce our sense of I and mine and the sense of ownership. Try to simplify. Try not to have too many things. And then just remind yourself that the things you do have are only yours for a limited amount of time, and then they're going to belong to somebody else. So that would help as well to reduce the likelihood of getting so angry and upset when things are taken. And then work on compassion. The person who took the things is probably suffering. When people are in a good state of mind, a positive, peaceful state of mind, they don't do things like steal and, rip people off. So the person is most probably in an unhappy, disturbed, unpeaceful state of mind. And not only that, but the act that they did is negative. They created negative karma, and they're going to suffer even more in the future as a result of what they've done. So contemplating that can help to transform your anger and annoyance into compassion instead. And then also thinking about your own karma. Why did this happen to me? Why did my things get stolen? So we might be able to recall in this lifetime that we did that kind of action, especially as little kids. You're taking your siblings' toys and and most probably in past lives as well. Maybe even that very same person in a previous life. We ripped off things from that person. Okay, so there's this karmic debt. So when people think about karma with conviction, that really helps in these kind of situations to think, okay, I had a karmic debt to that person, and now that's been paid off. Phew. You can even feel good about that. I don't have that karma anymore. And then also just making this determination that I'm not going to do that again. I'm never going to rip anybody else off, and instead try to practice generosity, do the opposite kind of action. So these are some of the things that we're advised to think about in the thought training teachings when we find ourselves in difficult circumstances. They really help to change our mind, change our attitude. And it might help to mentally donate that object to the other person. Just say, it's yours. You have it. That might, I don't know about this, this is a subject of discussion, but if that would actually alleviate the other person's bad karma, if you no longer think, that's mine, but if you think, it's yours, it belongs to you, if that would have any effect on their karma, I don't know. Probably debate about that. But at least it helps us, it helps our mind to think differently about it. But does this mean that we should never report a theft or try to get back things that were stolen from us? I was wondering about that. And in Venerable Chudrin's book, in case some of you don't know, there's a book of her commentary to the 37 practices. It's called Don't Believe Everything You Think. So she says, no, doesn't mean that. We can try to get things back. But the point is not to do it with anger at the other person and with the wish to retaliate and get revenge and make them suffer. To try to do it with an attitude of kindness and compassion. And I think this is especially true if what was stolen didn't belong only to oneself, but belonged to a group of people, like in a family. So if that property was needed for, children to have food on the, on the table and clothes and education and so on, so it's depriving them of their needs. So I think in that case, definitely one should try to retrieve. And also in the case of the Abbey, if somebody broke into the office, stole money or stole valuable equipment, this isn't just one person's belongings, but it belongs to the whole community. So it seems only right. I mean, that would be up to the community to discuss and decide, but it seems, it makes sense to try to retrieve that property. And also that property isn't only for the benefit of this community here, but it's, to carry on the work which benefits so many other people all over the world. Okay. And just one last thing. It's also helpful to hear stories of, people who do respond in a positive way to this kind of situation. And I remembered this story. I read a book, I think I read it a long time ago, but I think the name of the book was The Wisdom of the Desert Fathers by Thomas Merton. And it's stories of these Christian monks who were living in the desert, probably in the Middle East somewhere, maybe the Sinai Desert, and meditating way back in the past. And this one story I just thought was so sweet, really stayed in my mind. So this father, one day when he was out of his house, a thief broke in and stole a book. It's probably a nice religious book. And the thief brought the book to town and went to a bookshop and, asked the bookshop owner if he could buy the book and sell it. And the owner said, yeah, it looks like a nice book, but I don't know how much to give you. I don't know how much it's worth. So let me check up, and then you come back after a couple of days, and I'll give you the money. So then the shopkeeper went to the father and said, this person wants to sell me this book, but I don't know how much to give him. I don't know how valuable it is. So the father, instead of saying, that's my book, that was stolen from me, he said, no, it's a very nice book, and it's very valuable, and I think it's worth such and such money. He gave a very generous sum of money. And so the bookshop owner, went back to his shop, and the next time the thief came in, the shopkeeper said to the thief, oh, I brought the book up to Father so-and-so, and he said the book is worth such and such, and so that's how much I'm going to give you. And you probably can imagine the thief probably turned totally white and was probably shaking. But it really touched him. It really moved him that the father, didn't, report that it was a stolen book and this guy was the thief. So he decided to take the book back, and he brought it back to the father and apologized, said, I'm really sorry I stole this book from you. So it's a beautiful story just to show the father, the priest or monk or whatever, his attitude, compassion rather than selfishness and anger. And it had a nice ending, that this thief, saw the error in what he did and felt regret and apologized and cleared up that karma. So we can try this with little things. If we have small things stolen, and then gradually work up to bigger and bigger things. And also the practice for Tonglen. If we really do that extensively and imagine giving our body, our possessions, and so on to others, that would also help to deal in a real life situation in a more positive way.